This week, we welcome Bryson Bort. He's the founder and CEO at Scythe. He's going to talk about attack simulation. In the technical segment this evening, Corey Finley will be presenting a tool he created for internal network segmentation or segment reconnaissance using broadcast and service discovery protocol traffic. In the security news, why Hyatt is launching a bug bounty program, Amazon Key partners with MIQ, web vulnerabilities are up, IoT flaws are down, according to one source. Enterprise iPhones will soon be able to use an inconvenient security... Did I say inconvenient? That wasn't in my... a security dongle. And how El Chapo's IT manager cracked the encryption in chats and brought him down. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Organizations' internal networks are overly permissive and can't distinguish trusted from untrusted applications. Attackers abuse this condition to move laterally through networks, bypassing address-based controls to spread malware. Edgewise abstracts security policies away from traditional network controls that rely on IP addresses, ports, and protocols, and instead ties controls directly to applications. Edgewise allows organizations to analyze the network attack surface and segment workloads based on the software and how it's communicating. Edgewise monitors applications and protects data paths using zero-trust segmentation. Visit edgewise.net/securityweekly to get your free month of visibility. Some restrictions apply.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man who comes from a very special place. They say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but Paul, he's from Stupidus.
Welcome to Paul's Security Weekly.
Paul, the man from Stupider, right?
I felt like I was in elementary school all over again, Larry. Thank you. Today especially, I think it was important to feel like I was in elementary school, right? This is episode 589, recorded on January 10th, 2019 in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, where Larry Pesce is sitting next to me. Larry, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to have you.
On this day of days.
Yes.
Happy day of uterine escape.
Yes. Today is my birthday. Yes. It's very weird to read 2019 and have. I'm like, wow, I made it this far. It's good. Good. Made it another year.
Clearly, I've done something wrong.
I'm like, crap, it's my birthday. Crap, I'm 1 year older. Damn it.
How did I see that?
Yeah. On the lines remotely, Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome.
Good to be on. I am, I think, the first time joining you from a hotel room somewhere in Philadelphia. And happy birthday. And you are fast approaching the age where you have more memories than dreams.
Right. Right. Thanks for reminding me, Jeff. But also making me feel good because you're a lot older than I am. So as is Joff Fire, I mean, I'm glad you guys are here because I feel much better.
And in Jeff's case, he probably doesn't have all that many memories left.
Wow. Mr. Joff Fire is here with us. Joff, welcome to the program this evening.
G'day, Paul. I'm blurry. Why am I blurry? Okay. maybe it's the drink.
You're just like Bigfoot. You hide in out of focus areas.
That's right.
No, I just wanted to say, Paul, happy birthday.
Thank you.
One thing to keep in mind, it's not about getting older. It's about getting better tools as you get older.
Interesting. I'll work on that. So this year at the RSA Conference 2019 is, of course, the place to be for the latest in cybersecurity data innovation and thought leadership. March 4th through the 8th. We'll be there in San Francisco for RSA. I will be presenting I looked up what I was presenting on because I like did like 4 submissions and one got accepted.
But they didn't tell you which one?
No, no, not in the acceptance. So I finally like logged into the site the other day, and it'll be on the Docker security, which will be a lot of fun. So we have a discount code. You can go to rsaconference.com/securityweekly-US19. The discount code is 5U9SWFD to receive $100 off your conference pass. I would like to welcome our special guest, Bryson Bort. He is the founder and CEO of Scythe. He's been on the program before. And their landing page over at Scythe, which everyone can go visit, find out more information, and register for a demo, is scythe.io/securityweekly. Bryson, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'll keep things light and just say the only thing I regret is that I can't give you an awkward hug in person.
Oh, I will take a rain check on the awkward hug. How about that?
You know I'm good for it. I'll see you in San Francisco.
Awesome. Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun at RSA. Bryson, you've been on the show before, and I wanted to just start off and kind of get our audience up to date on attack simulation. It's been a growing category in my mind over the past couple of years. Kind of take us through where we were and how we got to where we are today.
Sure. I think it's helpful to start with what's out there. And certainly as we've been building this tool, we've been trying to figure out where do we fit in the pantheon of things that are available already to the public. And certainly there are open source penetration testing tools. There's kind of professional penetration testing kind of tools like Cobalt Strike. And those are forms of an expert way to penetrate an enterprise and establish some equivalent of adversarial simulation. And then on the other side, you have the new industry segment of breach and attack simulation. And breach and attack simulation is a mix of US and Israeli firms who all raised a lot of money to educate the market on what they think breach and attack simulation is. The challenge, I think, when you look at that, because when you talk about adversarial simulation, what is an adversary? An adversary represents a living person or organization that has specific goals, that is dynamically moving through phases of trying to get to something that's of interest to them out of your organization.
Bryson, speaking of attack simulation and adversary simulation, Carlos Perez is here with us from Trusted Sec. You weren't up on my screen, Carlos, and I totally forgot to introduce you. I apologize. Welcome to the program.
Don't worry. I forgive you.
His mic is muted.
No,
it's not. His mic's not muted.
No.
Carlos, you there?
Carlos,
Yes.
do you want us to simulate you?
He likes being simulated.
Carlos, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry.
He's been cussing you out.
Yeah. Sorry, brother.
So Johnny muted your mic.
Oh
headset.
boy, Carlos is just gonna stab me one day when I'm not expecting it, and I'm gonna totally deserve it. Welcome,
All
Carlos.
depends
You
what
can be
DCA will
expecting
allow
it
me
and
to
you
bring
won't
with me.
expect it.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, Bryson. Continue.
So when you're looking at the BAS space, the current industry offering is more controls validation than adversarial simulation. They allow you to replay traffic. They allow you to do discrete things on an endpoint, but none of that chains together. There's nothing lateral. There's nothing that allows you to demonstrate overall business impact. And that's where we kind of found out that we fit this middle of the road of we're continuous red team automation, where the BAS market does continuous and automated. They don't do adversarial simulation. They're not red team. And then just like pretty much everybody on this call, where you have Trusted Sec, Black Hills, and InGuardians who all do red team services, and then the professional tool set that's used to do adversarial simulation, that some of those are tools they've built. Some of those are other tools that they use. That does the adversarial part, but it doesn't do continuous and automated assessment across an enterprise.
And what I'm finding too is a lot of differences in these tools. Some that allow you to do varying levels of customization. And at Scythe, I think you really kind of took that to heart, that people would want to have their own payloads and such, correct?
Absolutely. So we built it from the ground up to be modular. The software development kit that we provide to customers is the same one that we've used internally to build out. I think that's important to note that because that was built into design. It's not like it was something we added on afterward and, oh, that would be really good if we let other people do some things. No, it was built that way from the start. And so what we try to do for most places is here's an 80% solution. A lot of the rote things that you have to do adversarial simulation, like I need a set of relays, I need to have these kinds of communications, I need to have these kinds of capabilities on endpoints and in the network. We provide those out of the box, and then we allow you to add your own modules and build out your own arsenal. And that's a place where, for example, I'll throw it to Joff at Black Hills, where we're looking for Black Hills, who's a customer, to build out that arsenal for what works for them. And then later in 2019, we're going to offer a marketplace where they'll be able to resell and share a lot of the things that they've built internally.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that. That's really great. No one else is doing that, to my knowledge, Bryson. That's awesome. Now, when the people on the Defenders team, right? I mean, the red teamers that are, working for an enterprise are, kind of like a dotted line to the blue team, right? I mean, their goal is also defense. But when they get a hold of these types of tools, right, open source, commercial, or whatever, I think some of the goals are kind of interesting. I think some can show you where some of your weaknesses are, but are those weaknesses in your actual systems, or are those weaknesses in your defense, or are they both? And I think some of those goals are kind of different, right? I remember when we first started talking about this, Bryson, you said specifically that one of the things was to see if your defenses and or products that you've implemented are working or not. Is that still very much the case?
Yeah, so what we look at is, again, this is the advantage of the red team perspective, is you're testing the holistic defenses of an enterprise. Because it's not just technology, it's not just controls, it's also the people element. And people are the employees, which I like to think are the greatest surface area in any organization. And then it's also the staff, the blue team, the incident response. How quickly can they respond? And then when you bring in the tool piece, that's where it's what tools are able to find what things, and then how are those folks able to identify and determine what is a compromise, the extent of that compromise. And the challenge, of course, is if you're on the blue team, you're overwhelmed by information. Your SOC is being inundated with tons of false positives. And so being able to replay traffic through that and replay actual adversarial actions through that, you can start to bring down that noise by tailoring in the sensors throughout your enterprise at the endpoint level and at the network to exactly what you want to be looking for. One other example, we had a phone call today with somebody who leads the threat detection team at a major Fortune 50. And he was looking at how he can use this tool. Their red team already uses it. And he was looking at ways to use this tool to be able to validate detections. And he's already surpassed everything that he's already been able to find on the market. And so it was useful that his red team was already using this, because that allowed him yet another avenue where the red team could demonstrate something, throw that over to him, and now he has the ability to replay that internally.
Yeah, that's really big. More questions for Bryson, and I think, Bryson, you have a demo too, but I know, Larry, Joff, Carlos, you all work very closely in this, specific space. So
I just wanted to add in a comment. First of all, Bryson, I'm sorry I haven't been in contact. I've been a little busy, but Black Hills, we are looking at the product. We do have it as a customer, and we're starting to use it in some of our engagements to automate the attack simulation portion, and which we call C2 pivots, but it really is given a position on the inside of a network. We get to start to move around that network and see what we can get to, whether we can escalate locally, whether we can escalate domain-wise, whether we can actually laterally move in the environment. So we see what Scythe's offering as potentially a way to accelerate that process for us, because a lot of the efforts that we make are fairly manually intensive, and so a tool like this, I think, can really help with the assessment. But but I think I'd caution people not to go too far either. And I think that's where I think Scythe has done a good job of allowing customers to be able to extend the product and to customize it. I think that's really a critical piece, because I don't think it's not that the potential attack surface is static, right? We always need to develop and innovate. So anyway,
yeah,
that's
Jeff,
my 2 cents.
I'll go back to something you and I have talked about over the last couple of years about that, which is, I mean, at a place like Black Hills, what makes you special? And it's the talented and experienced hackers that you have on staff who are able to do research and think through attack space and attack surface as it's changing and adapting on the fly, right? And automation is just there to take a lot of the rote pieces off of you and then extend the framework or bring in your own tools and own scripts to, on the fly, work with what you see there in the customer environment. And that's where we see the market's going from. Our roadmap is to go as broad as possible to cover as many platforms so that you have the levers to pull and build into, not to replace the experienced hacker.
Yeah, I think that's an important point too. I mean, because if you can get we all need repeatable processes, right? And that's automation is definitely helpful in that area. But on top of that, we need creativity to be able to extend beyond just the repeatable process, because that's where the value add is for a penetration testing company. And some of that's automatable and some of that is not. But where we can automate, we're all better off for it. So the extensibility is really helpful. But anyway, I was wondering if Larry had a thought in this area as well.
I don't. You guys did a pretty good job, but I do know that we've had some great discussions, at least our team with Bryson, about the product, and great, amazing stuff.
Bryson, does simulation do it kind of a disservice? And can you kind of expand upon that? Because I think there's a lot of different, like you hire a pen test team, they bring in their own custom tools. You've got Metasploit, you've got other tools, commercial, open source, ones that are testing Mitre attack. How much of it is a simulation and how much of it is actual malware that's on the system but not doing any harm?
Sure. I mean, it's really semantics. I mean, what is a simulation? A simulation is where I'm demonstrating something without actually doing it. For example, we have ransomware modules. Mm-hmm. I don't think any enterprise would appreciate having ransomware, right, whether it was simulated or not, that actually took something down, right? You can't affect operations. And so what we do for something like ransomware is we will, on the box, simulate the same kind of processing and file encryption that you would have with files that we create up on the spot, as opposed to locking the file system itself. And then, you essentially spray tag that and note that machine would have fallen prey to ransomware. And then you can look at the endpoint to see, do the sensors detect the kinds of ransomware activities short of the machine locking? And then on the network, do you see the traffic back to the C2 server that's the same kind of thing you would see in a real world scenario, where that traffic goes back to note, hey, this machine is now owned, and what do we do? That's, I think, the difference between simulation and then the actual thing. Because at the end of the day, we've built the actual thing that you draw up to specification. It's just a question of what does it actually do? What is the behaviors that it exhibits? And those are completely under the customer control.
Mm. Jeff?
Yeah, that's why this is Carlos, sorry.
That's okay.
This is why I see it more. I hear other vendors say red team simulation, and I have my issues when I hear red team simulation, but it's not actual red team. It's red team is more strategic than tactical. This is more tactical. So when I see tools like this, what comes to my mind is unit testing. This is like a way for you to do unit testing on your controls, unit testing on the products, your ADR, your HIPs, and the other types of technological stuff that you have in your environment.
That's very well said, Carlos. I mean, is it unit testing your QA? I think that's kind of, mincing words, but I like that as an analogy, right? You would put in a software development lifecycle, right? You would develop code. Well, in a perfect world, you would develop code, do some unit testing on that code, and then push it to QA, and they would do testing and find bugs. And I'm laughing because we all know it doesn't always happen that way. And this is a way for you to replicate that in your security program. Is that a fair assessment, Bryson?
Yeah, so imagine doing that in real life. Different employees are going to use that code differently. It's based on where they are, whether that's remote or different parts even inside the infrastructure, because there might be different controls. How does that affect that? And then, so combining those behaviors, combining those different environments, combining the different pieces. And then the challenge for Red Team has always been, how do I continuously do that? How do I do that at scale? Because when you're looking at an enterprise can be 10,000 folks and 50,000 endpoints. And it's really hard for an average Red Team engagement to be able to effectively exercise all of that at multiple levels. And you certainly can't do it continuously because they scope the time and the budget where you get the snapshot as opposed to being able to do the replays.
Jeff. Oh, Jeff, I think you're muted.
No.
Now I'll speak. You're starting to answer the question in the dialogue the last minute or two. I'm listening to the capability and what this does, and because I'm immersed back in that three-letter world of PCI, I don't immediately think of a PCI requirement that I can point to and say, oh, if people had Scythe, they could meet this requirement. But I don't want to. I want to ask a more open-ended question, not to get bottled up in PCI, but in general, how beyond what you're talking about so far in terms of red teams, how do you sell this into an organization? Because many times organizations, their budget is already spent on a lot of technologies, or there's people within an organization that really want it, but they got to justify the spend to their management. What are your thoughts on either, because many companies, organizations, they point to regulatory compliance to justify a lot of their security spend. What do you offer? What is your approach to companies that it's not, they don't clearly have a red team, they don't clearly have a this or that, but they would still benefit from using this tool?
Sure. So the market segment, I think, that captures what you're talking about are mid-sized companies. They are 500 people, 1,000 people. They tend to be in the middle of the country doing, whatever that business is. They typically have a fairly robust IT staff, but they don't have access other than through outsourcing to offensive security talent. So, how do I bring what's effectively, because mixing things here, I think of offensive security personnel as kind of like creative talent, because it's a mix of art and science with experience. And it's very hard to recruit those kinds of folks into remote locations for where these companies are. So what do you do? And the way we look at it is what we've built is a very low barrier to entry, doesn't require experience. We'll do a demo here in a few minutes and everyone can see just how easy it is to use. But it's a coloring book for a company like that to be able to have their sysadmins, their IT folks run this and get to start to have a red team capability in-house that, while it can't replace the kind of thing you would get from any of the three companies that I mentioned that are here on this webcast, but it's something that you can do continuously, and it's something that you can start to test things internally. You get to do that QA on your own.
Right. Yeah. So you get better value out of somebody that actually has that talent, the as you put it, the hired talent, as it were, the creative folks. Do the automated part first. Do all that simulation and fix the problem, so you get more value out of the people that think outside of the box and find the things that all that other stuff didn't find. This is a no-brainer.
Well,
Really?
As a follow-up question, what percentage of the capability do you see as sort of an extension of the pen test aspect of sort of whether we think it should be or not vulnerability discovery, or like like you mentioned, being able to reach everything, versus more of I keep coming up with the word training tool, term training tool, where you're, teaching and educating, what little, overworked, stressed out IT security staff you have that are responsible for detection and catching things. So I guess how much of this tool can be used sort of as a learning tool or a training tool? Paul alluded to it could be tied into maybe software development, but similar to that, how much of the tool can be used more as a training, live fire test type of exercise versus simply the scalability of finding all the vulnerabilities in places you couldn't ordinarily reach because you can't afford that level of a pen test from a premier pen testing company.
I don't know how to chalk up percentages. I do know when you look at training, blue team training has always struggled with how do I provide something that's realistic and not contrived so that you can effectively teach the various functions for the blue team. And it's difficult because, of course, the red team or the offensive side doesn't want to share those pieces because then it makes it much harder for them to operate in an environment. I'm happy to note that Rapid7 actually is a customer, and they use us to solve that very problem in their formal blue team training that they give out in industry. So we already have a demonstrated use case in the real world of formal training using our tool across a 5-day scenario with multiple pieces all the way from forensics to different kinds of network traffic analysis to teach that. And it's very easy, of course, to bring that in-house. I think what you might be getting toward, Jeff, is the purple team perspective of combining red team operations and blue team operations in the operational environment with that kind of shared intelligence. And that's something we're working toward. I don't think we have it solved right now.
Okay. Now, the answer to the question of how you do percentages is you just make stuff up and sound convincing, and we'll believe you.
Well, Jeff, 9 out of 10 statistics are made up on the spot.
Exactly.
And you can only read 80% of what you hear on the internet.
Oh,
Bryson, did you say you had a demo?
Yeah, let's see the demo.
You want to get to the demo?
I think this is a good segue into the demo.
All right.
I want to read the demo.
I want to experience the demo.
All right, put your 3D glasses on.
I got my glasses on. I don't know if they're 3D or not. If I had drink enough alcohol, they are 3D. It's awesome.
Well, first I have to orient you to our highly technical diagram. So we're going to be in the upper left corner. We're going to log into our Scythe server, and we're going to launch. We're going to build a campaign, and we're going to launch a campaign against an enterprise. Of course, I did this as a recorded demo because I know better than trying for the Peter principle of, or Murphy's law of everything going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're a very wise man.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that out loud.
We're all thinking
So our server can be an on-premise server that
you said
you have to work with, or it can be a SaaS instance, and you get your own dedicated SaaS instance. So what we're going to do, we're going to log in. And we're multi-tenant, so we can handle multiple users on a server. And we're going to build a campaign. And a campaign consists of 3 parts. Controls, where and when can it run? So you're able to control that this isn't something that can splash because it, as an implant, has the potential to go somewhere that you might not intend. And then communications. So communications there are different communication modules on here. 3 that I want to call out because they are Google and Twitter. Both of those are actual Google and Twitter domains. So it looks like it's going to Google Sheets, or it looks like it's going to the Twitter domain. And that's for all command and control and data exfiltration. And then steganography, which allows you to upload images, and then through encrypted HTTP, the command and control and the exfiltration is all embedded inside those pictures.
Bryson, sorry, a quick question in terms of defense against backdoors like that are using Twitter and social media for backdoor communications. How many people can actually catch that today?
I don't know how to answer that. It's really a question of, again, going back to network traffic analysis, what do you flag? And then where we're trying to shift things, and this is where I like what the part of what the Mitre attack framework has also been pushing, is we need to move to a behaviorally focused defensive perspective. And so it's less, oh, that's over Google protocol, and it's more, well, what are the behaviors being exhibited, and what's my ability to correlate those behaviors to a benign or a malicious intent?
Gotcha.
And that's where we like our users to focus that emphasis. And that's a lot of what I like about the Mitre attack framework.
Nice.
So this also highlights 2 of the 3 levels of customization. There's, of course, the default settings for any particular module that I pick. And then, as you can see below, context-sensitive parameters. And those parameters allow you to do lots of different modifications because for example, like heartbeat or jitter in the HTTP packet traffic. And then the third level, which we'll demonstrate, well, which I'll quickly show later, is the ability to build your own modules and import them into this. And this is something that we're in discussions with multiple different service providers. Like I talked about, rolling out a marketplace later this year where they'll be able to share the modules that they've built. And then we're in discussions with folks on the cyber threat side on ways to adapt Stix and Taxi to automatically be able to import those threats from these things. And then the final piece is we're looking at a particular scripting framework that will allow folks to use it. It's open source. I won't announce it yet, but it's going to be coming out here in the next month, where you'll be able to build simple scripts into that and then automatically import them into modules here. The advantage being, as opposed to something that allows you to do essentially limited unit test, you can now chain those unit tests together to reflect, again, the way an adversary acts, which is chaining multiple pieces together over an overall enterprise.
Nice.
And then capabilities here, of course, call out for the red teams, unmanaged PowerShell is an available module. And then we also include SMB relay down here as well as in communications, just reflecting that ability. And then this is the newest thing that we've released that's really cool. So that's what it took to manually build a campaign. That's something that anybody can do and end up with an implant that has really interesting capabilities. On top of that, you have the option to build the TTPs or the automated logic into the implant itself. And that's what we're going to demonstrate here. I have the actions, which are the capabilities, and then those capabilities have specific things they're able to do. And then there's logic that I can build into it. That logic can be delays or branch logic. So I can wait a period of time to do something which defeats a lot of defensive capabilities. Or I have the ability for the implant to do analysis where based on what it can see at that endpoint and then conduct actions of different types based on what it sees. So what we're building up here is a classic stage 0 APT that lands, calls back to the C2 server, dynamically loads additional capabilities onto the endpoint, which get incorporated into the binary. So this is something that's already deployed in a compromised scenario. And then I have the ability to call back additional scripts or have that execute specific commands. And that was that window we just had pop up. So this is part of where you can see third-party integration. Because in those areas, I can call back to other scripts or I can call back to other tools that are hosted on the server that aren't even completely integrated into the Scythe platform. That could be something like Metasploit. That could be something like your own script to, steal credentials independent of what we've already got included.
And so, Bryson, as you're building this, Oh, well, I guess the goal is to be caught by some kind of endpoint protection at some point, or like how much do you get swallowed up by some of the endpoint protection, or is like the initial foothold that you're building pretty stealthy as well?
So I will only answer with what we've seen, which is we don't get caught.
Okay. Fair enough.
Now, that there's lots of reasons for that, but fundamentally, it's not a question of getting caught or not caught. It's about determining what's that right tension of where these things should be looking and where those sensors should be going off. In some cases, you want to validate that your controls or that your tools are working.
Mm-hmm.
In other cases, you don't.
Right.
We were last month. We had a deployment at a bank, and the pen tester who was running it calls us up. And he's like, "They're not seeing anything I'm doing. Is there any advice you can give me on how to make this even louder so they will finally catch it?"
I like it.
That's when I was going to suggest that from a UX perspective, instead of that delay drop down with all the boxes to check, you just have the volume control, and of course it needs to go to 11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, was the answer download terabytes of porn to their domain controller until it runs out of disk space?
That's kind of where we ended up, but we gave them a series of escalating actions to increase the size and the frequency of the traffic to the point where it's like, all right, well, I don't know what that is, but it's something, and it clearly is big, so maybe I should take a look. And that's where you end up. And then you have the ability to save all of that. So the implant we built to specification, and then the logic that we built into it, we can save that automatically to an internal threat catalog. So with one button, we can bring that back up at any time for future campaigns. So this is the replay piece. What's interesting is you also have two options. You can replay with the same implant signature, or the platform automatically creates different signatures for every implant that's created. So even if you were to later on manually build the same thing, it would still have a different hash signature on the wire. Nice. So we've got our campaign here, and what we're going to do now is, and here you can see, so we have three options for the implant. You've got an EXE, which would load onto hard drive. You've got DLL, which can load to be fileless malware. And you have a third option that's not presented here, which is you also can get this as shellcode for deployment. Mm-hmm. But that's the core piece, is we've now created this implant to specification with all the command and control back to the server. It's all there. But we also offer the option for deployment. We have two options: drive-by download and then email phishing. Mm-hmm. Both of those you can customize. We have built-in templates for them to use. So phishing, of course, being how 90+% of all attacks are created. That's some of the most common, and it's the easiest way to go across an entire enterprise. Here's the phishing attack from the user side. This is the boring part of every offensive demo because, of course, it demonstrates that you don't see anything. It's completely transparent to the user.
Oh, so you embedded this payload in a Word document?
Yes. In this case, it was a weaponized macro. Mm-hmm. We provide two different kinds of weaponized macros to deliver this.
But Bryson,
you can also bring your own payload.
It didn't ask me if I wanted to run macros or not.
Yeah, it did.
It did, but I automatically... Oh, it did? I didn't see that part.
Yeah, it does. But the thing is, it always asks you to do that, even for good, useful things. And this is coming from
okay, it did. Yeah.
And you're going to be like, oh, okay.
And
so
everyone just clicks
that's
yes.
It.
Yeah, everyone just clicks yes anyway.
So it's already done. We can look at the process listing. Nothing shows up. But meanwhile, back at the server, now remember, this is the stage 0 with the embedded logic that we built. And we can already see when we look in there and we see our desktop pop up as compromised, that it's already started to load additional modules. And then now what we're going to see is what it's done. So the capabilities, in this case, we run ARP, we run a specific command, we start doing some different things. All of that data is returned here to the server. So it's encrypted at rest, of course, and it's encrypted in transit, so there's no risk of it being actually compromised. But the point here is that you have a common place for your red team to be able to see who did what, where, when, and what was accomplished. The other value to the user is this is my ability to establish business impact to the compromise. This person clicking a link is not the same as this person clicking a link. The value to the business is different, and you're able to demonstrate that through here. So this is this part here, which is the full listing of everything. That gets integrated into Splunk, and that's your ability to do the thorough technical analysis of what happened. This is where you would sit down with the blue team and actually walk through to understand what we should have seen where, what things caught what, and what do we need to do to fix it. Okay, so the other thing is, of course, you can do manual operations. So through the GUI, you're able to open shell right on the box. And there we are, we're shell right on the endpoint. And we can manually conduct all the commands we want. And at this point, you have arbitrary execution. So this is another example where you could also download other scripts or other tools and execute them as well.
Yeah, that's nice in a purple team where the defense, like, I'm still not seeing you do anything, so you can dump into this and try a whole bunch of stuff until they eventually, hopefully, find you, right?
Correct.
Do you ever do you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, you're getting cold?
We leave that up to the client.
Oh, the fun you could have.
Okay, so at the end of all of that, you have the ability then to download two different kinds of executive summary reports. The first shows all of the different parts of the Mitre attack framework that were in scope of that assessment, and then a high-level summary of how successful they were. So with one click, you can see essentially what was the Mitre view of what was accomplished.
And now,
the other, sorry.
I was just going to say, before you're saying that you saved this particular configuration, and can you just keep running this, Bryson, and get some kind of report that tells you about the defense changing over time, whether it's getting better or worse?
Yes. That's one of the things that I think is really cool. So I've had CIOs and CISOs come back to me and comment, well, this is great. You're going to continually find things that I already know are broken. Well, the other way to look at that is, what's your ability to do change management right now? Right? I identify that I need something to remediate. Mm-hmm. We then develop a fix. Takes X amount of time to develop and build and ostensibly test that fix, and then we deploy it. Mm-hmm. Well, what if, and of course that's treating a project as very discrete, but there are chances that there are going to be interim steps and there's going to be pieces that are done before the overall thing's deployed. This is your chance to see in real time, well, in roughly real time, did I actually improve?
That's awesome. Now, can you modify that attack? Can you like rerun a scenario and go, yeah, I know that this technique works, but now I want you to go execute that attack, but without this technique, and kind of see what happens?
Yes. I mean, there's two ways to answer that. One, of course, is you don't have to execute capabilities that you have. The other goes back to that ability that we demonstrated in the automation screen, which is I can add capabilities to a live campaign. Mm-hmm. So implants that are already in compromised hosts can have additional capabilities and communications modified in the field from the C2 server, which is one that's just like real life. Two, that's the kind of thing that your defense should be attenuated to, because that's yet another way that an attacker has to be noisy, because the easiest place to catch an attacker is on the wire, since there's nowhere for them to hide other than to blend into the other traffic. They can't defeat the laws of physics and not be on the wire.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, like, can you build scenarios and then change them, in other words, to kind of predict what would happen if a defensive control was in place? In other words, if your defensive recommendations say everyone should upgrade to Windows 10, mm-hmm. and can you like prove them wrong and say, actually upgraded in Windows 10 wouldn't do a damn thing for you because our scenarios would still run the same way, right?
I would argue generically that that statement is absolutely correct.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's the same thing as also looking at cloud instances. I mean, at the end of the day, the endpoint operating system, whether it's physical, whether it's VM, whether it's cloud hosted, that's transparent to something that's running on it.
Right. Yeah, I guess that really speaks to defense, right? Is you're allowing the defenders to make intelligent decisions and prioritize effectively rather than just saying, well, you know, we're going to upgrade to this or do this, and therefore we're going to be more secure. With a tool like this, you can say, actually, that could be a complete waste of time and we should do something else.
Correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Because, I mean, you know, being defenders in the past, right? How many times we've been in that scenario but not had the tools to really show what they should or shouldn't do, right?
Yep. That's, yeah.
That's awesome.
And even from the quote the red team perspective, that really has some value. Is that we tend to go down one path to achieve a goal, and we don't find all of the possible issues. Great, we found that one path to that goal. Well, what are the other paths? Well, take those capabilities here. We can fix that problem. What are some of the other capabilities? And that's, to me, that's brilliant.
I agree.
So that you can explore that quote red team mentality from multiple angles.
In which saying that I actually was in one of my presentations years ago where I said, you know, I was doing pen testing. I'm like you said, I'd find a path, I'd achieve the goal.
Yep.
And then maybe I'd find another path, and then they'd want me to go test something else or do something else or review the findings or whatever. And then I'm okay, now we concluded. And I'm like, I only explored 2 paths. Like,
yeah, how many were there?
How do I automate what may be 6 or 12 other paths? And I think, Bryson, you know, your product has the answer to that, which is great.
Well, so I'll throw out the kudos to Black Hills. That's what they do. That's how they use it.
Right.
Again, going back to bringing in the talent into it, they use our tool to blanket multiple pathways, and then they have their talent come in and look at where can we go further and what parts are more interesting.
Right.
So it gives a lot more time to have them do individual research as a part of the project, as well as a lot more time to then focus on really honing on specific things that are contextually interesting to the business, as opposed to the fact that they've already blanketed everything.
Awesome. Were there other things in the demo, or Bryson, other things you want to share with our audience this evening?
Sure, we'll wrap this up quickly here. So, executive summary report. This is just a high-level view of how this performed over the kill chain phases, because of course, adversarial campaigns are not monolithic. You want to be able to understand performance in each piece. The remedial suggestions are rather simple at the moment, but this is something that in the long term will get much more sophisticated as this is used, and that data is anonymously available back to support that use. Here's the threat catalog. The threat catalog I described earlier. These are one clicks where it already has real-world malware built to specification, along with the TTPs of how they operate built in. And then the next thing we'll show is the Mitre attack wizard. So if you want to be able to demonstrate different parts of the Mitre attack framework, we have those built in already into the threat catalog, as well as we have a wizard that shows you how to do any particular part of the Mitre attack framework, including using our platform, because there are going to be things you have to do beyond our platform, or some of them you can do, of course, just with our platform. And then I'll skip ahead here. Here you can see the different users so everybody can see what everyone's doing. This is an example of creating your own modules and how they integrate at the GUI. And then the final piece we show, of course, is there's the big red button. With one click, because of course you can build a schedule in when these things expire so they don't run if they land somewhere they're not supposed to, or when. But with the one big red button, you can make all instances go away from your enterprise, so you maintain complete control over the campaign at all times.
Nice.
And that is the conclusion of our demo.
Sweet. And Bryson, I'm assuming if you go to scythe.io/security weekly, the action you want people to take is to sign up for a demo, correct?
Well, we just gave the demo, so we're welcome to do another demo to talk through specific use cases for them. Additionally, in December, we launched the ability for folks to sign up for a free trial. The only thing we do for the free trial is just vet that people are legitimate, because this is a real tool that could do real damage.
Right.
But other than that, just making sure that folks are what they say they are. We give them 2 weeks to play with it in their own environment.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So like Bryson said, there was the demo. If you are interested in more and you want a free trial, scythe.io/security weekly. Bryson, that's great. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Paul. And again, happy birthday.
Thank you. And with that, we'll take a short break, come back, and go into our technical segment for this evening. Stay tuned.